Now, let's get me off the screen right now as a solo. I want to bring on a special guest.
Yeah, good, Brad. How are you?
I'm going very well. Now, you're living in Melbourne.
Yes, I am.
And you came over from Punjab.
Yes, so
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Chandigarh.
Chandigarh. When
Yeah.
where did you finish your schooling?
So I finished my schooling in 2004. Then I did engineering in Chandigarh before moving to Sydney in 2009.
So you moved to Australia in 2009.
That's correct.
Right. So you would have hated my guts up until about 2011.
Well, up until you retired from international cricket.
Yeah. Do you go for Australia?
One day is look. My love for Indian cricket is you got to look at my rising up. So when I was growing up, what Indian cricket meant to me, what someone like a Sachin Tendulkar meant to me. So I can't take that out of myself. That's ingrained in my blood. So there's a few stories when I was growing up. I can share those if you like. But
go for it.
Yep. So in that 1996 World Cup, I was a 12-year-old at the time, so very impressionable mind. And here comes this tiny little guy by the name of Sachin Tendulkar who's smashing everybody around the park. And then, I was 10 years old at the time. And then when I was 12 years old, it's the year 1998, the famous year when the great man had one of his best years of his career. I can never take that out of me. Eh? Like, I'd be riding. My school was about 6 kilometers from where I lived. From my house, so I'd be riding back, and there was this, if I'm not wrong, 1998 Coca-Cola Cup, India, Zimbabwe, and Australia. Yeah, and India and Australia were playing, and I leave the school, had a quick look at a TV on one of the shops. India is batting, 100 miles an hour, riding my bike back home. Then my friend's home was about midway, about 3 kilometers from school. So I stopped there, watched the game, and here's Sachin. He smashed Tom Moody for like 2 or 3 sixes in a span of a couple of overs. And I'm like, stuff this, I'm going home. So I just stayed there, yeah? And no phones at the time. So parents were worried, where's the kid gone? Until I reached home about 3 hours later. So that's the sort of upbringing I had, with cricket. And there's this, again, 1998, India, Sri Lanka, and Zimbabwe again playing a tri-series in Sharjah. And India and Sri Lanka used to be a bloody good team at the time. Yeah, just coming off of the World Cup win in '96. And it's really late at night, about midnight, and I have to go to school next day. And parents are like 10 o'clock. Nope, you're going to the bed. So everyone's sleeping. I take my blanket with me, turn the TV on, and have my blanket like this so that the light from the TV doesn't go to any of the other rooms. And India were losing the game, and then Robin Singh and Ajit Agarkar, I think, smashed like a 12 ball 26 or something. And I'm watching there, I'm sort of jumping, and all of a sudden I get a smack at the back of my head. So in my excitement, I forgot that I was making a bit of noise, and my father woke up. So that's how I grew up watching cricket. Yeah, so I'll always support Indian cricket, but Australia is my new home, and Australia, I always support Australia when it doesn't involve India.
Anyway, let's get straight into it. What are the questions that you have for me on the cricket world right now?
Look, if you don't mind, we'll start with Test cricket. I'm a bit of a purist. So Test cricket, there's a lot of talk going on around Test cricket. I personally sometimes get worried about the future of Test cricket. Where do you see Test cricket in 5 to 10 years' time? What do you see are real big threats?
I think it comes with the pay gap, actually, because you just look at Australia playing New Zealand down in Kiwi land, and Australia are just too good for New Zealand. New Zealand got some great players. They fight really hard. But, to promote the game down there, you've got to have a livelihood where it's compatible to all the other cricketers around the world. It's the same with the West Indies, same with Sri Lanka, Pakistan. Pakistan players sometimes don't even get paid for 6 months. England players are probably getting paid better than anyone else. Indian players are getting paid really well. But I think it's that pay gap for a start. Number two, it's also the depth of population. So New Zealand and the West Indies don't have the population of many of the other nations around there. So participation rates aren't the same as what you got in the other major countries. So that's a huge worry for those two particular nations. And for me, I want West Indies cricket to really grow back to where it was when I was growing up in the 70s, because they were athletic. You had 4 fast bowlers really pressurising the opposition batsman. I didn't play cricket because Australia were winning. I played because Australia were getting thumped by the West Indies. I'm looking at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka don't get exposed to big cricket or don't play as many test matches as what India, Australia and England do. And Sri Lanka's got a reasonable population as well. They've got a good love for the game. But just because they don't get exposed to it, that's a worry for me. Pakistan not playing India, that's another big one for me. Politics has got in the way there. I understand all that. But if you have a Pakistan-India series going along with an England-Australia series, so you've got the Ashes series and India and Pakistan, the excitement around the world of cricket at that stage would be massive, huge. So for me, that's where Test cricket is a worry for me. Why would I go and put my body through the rigmarole of bowling potentially 30 overs in a day over a 5-day period? So, potentially 2 days of 30 overs in a Test match, when I can virtually get paid the same playing T20 cricket where I only have to bowl 4 overs. So that's the other threat as well. Fast bowling's the biggest issue for me at Test level.
Yep.
Getting fast bowlers wanting to play Test cricket for a long period of time. I think that's where the game can really fall away on an entertainment value. And I'm always going to worry about Test cricket, but I think there's a lot of love there still that people actually want to play for their country when they first start out. And they get to a certain stage, I might not be able to play Test cricket. I better concentrate on the T20 cricket. We just want to make that little component where they think they've lost the ability to play Test cricket. We want them to go for another couple of years to pursue an opportunity to play Test cricket, if you understand what I mean. So that's probably the threats for Test cricket for me, yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're across the news coming from India just a few days ago. They have bridged the gap between people who played, say, the leagues and people who purely play Test cricket. So there is an incentive scheme where the players who play Test cricket only, or any player, regardless of whether you play all the other formats or not. But if you play Test cricket for India, you're going to get close to like $80,000 a game or $100,000 a game in Australian dollar, which I think is a fantastic thing, yeah. Because now
$80,000 a game.
Yeah.
That's a lot more than what. That's a fair.
If I'm not wrong.
But I think that's a good thing. You get paid per game.
Yeah.
And that's a huge incentive. So that's something that the ICC can look at as well for the West Indian players and Sri Lankan players. You get paid a little bit extra for playing Test cricket, and where we get that money out of the coffers, I don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
But either we get special sponsors that are dealing in that market over there, oil and gas, to help out. Whether we fund it from our other cricket associations, and I think that's a great incentive. You can't have the likes of Aya, who's pulled out because of back spasms, going to go and train with KKR, who actually controls the player. You've got a BCCI centralised contract, but you've also got a contract with KKR. But you're going to go and train with KKR while your services should be with your cricket board at that stage. So you should be out the NCA, I think it is over there, where they put you through your paces for rehabilitation. So I think the incentive scheme there is get more pay per game at Test level, and that will keep players wanting to play Test match.
Really the way to bring sponsors into any sport is if you can bring crowd to the games. And I personally think that the ICC and the big three or big four, they need to think about how we are going to bring people to watch Test matches outside of India as well. And what are you, keeping that in mind, what are your thoughts on this current scheduling? Would it help if we had 4-day tests starting on a Thursday and ideally looking at, say, a day-night test? So you start sort of late in the afternoon on a Thursday, you finish on a Sunday night. So you can have people at least on Friday, Saturday, Sunday come in with their kids to watch Test cricket when it's not scorching hot. And the reason I say that is, I'm a purist. I don't like tinkering with Test cricket at all. But if you look at the stats, I was reading up something a couple of weeks ago. From the 1980s to now, your win percentage has gone up from like 60% all the way up to 85% last year, and 100% this year. Small sample set, but 100% this year so far. At the same time, the number of overs in a test match, in a completed test match, on an average, is only sitting at, it has for the first time come down below 300. So you're not even really using the 5 days per se. Look at, say, the last few years, there's not a lot of games that are going into the 5th day.
But that's 360 overs. I totally agree with you. With that 4-day test matches, I think they should be played. And if you're playing 4-day test matches, there's no reason why you can't push that out to 100 overs in a day.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes the game move on a little bit quicker, but also the incentive to win the games now. You've got to be batting in more of a hurry, a bit like England. So you're bringing in a bit of the shorter format skills, but you still got the longer format endurance aspect of there, where you're working over batsmen and you can take your time. I think a lot of the Shield games that we're playing now, that 4-day stuff, we're always getting results because you're having generous declarations, or teams are playing more aggressive cricket. So I think there's got to be an incentive there. I totally agree with you. 4-day test matches are ideal. I don't know whether an Ashes test series with 4 days would be ideal. I think you could still play the Ashes with 5 days, and even India with 5 days, because I think India, Australia, especially, I still think there's value with a 5-day test match there, because both teams are evenly matched. But when you're playing against the likes of Sri Lanka or the less playing nations, which are really struggling in this particular arena, I think you can drop down to 4-day test matches. I think that's ideal. You've got the World Test Championship every 3 years, final every 3 years or 2 years. It doesn't really matter. But I think we could, I think we could put it into sections. So you've got 3 sections. So you've got the top 4. So they play in a series over a 2-year period, home and away. But the top 2 play off on the World Test Championship final. The bottom 2 play against the top 2 of the next division during that final series, where they play 3 home tests and 3 away to either stay up in A division or get relegated. And it's the same with the bottom 2 teams in Section 2 against Section C champions. And down the bottom there, the Section C bottom 2 play against the best associates that want to play Test cricket, trying to get up as well. So you're still bringing it there. So that's another way that we can change the scheduling for Test cricket for me. And then those teams that are struggling at Test level, if they have a resurgence of some really good cricketers in a period, all of a sudden they've got a chance of going up the ranks and winning the World Test Championship. So they're going back to basics, but they're playing in a series where it's more competitive, where it's close, rather than playing India versus Sri Lanka, where the chances of it being a close Test series are very slim. So I think that's something that the ICC can work out as well. Look out, because we've got to keep Test cricket surviving. I think the other thing is too, I'd like to see the characters of the game allowed to express themselves out in the middle. And I think you go back to Merv Hughes, you go back to Dennis Lilly, Alan Border had a bit of characteristic with him himself as well. You had more characters back in the day. I think that's something as well. We're in the entertainment game. Yes, you want to win, but still you're in the entertainment game. You've got fans that are coming. You've got to engage with those fans in a number of ways. It's just not about, oh, that's a good shot. It's about, how do we interact with the fans? What are we giving the fans? What bonus are we giving the fans other than just the game of cricket? So that's something that we can really look at as well.
I absolutely agree with that. You need to make every test like a carnival, bring people out there, make sure they have fun, and they go back. Kids go back with memories, wanting to come and watch the same thing again. I think that is the most important thing.
I think
just
just with that, with the Big Bash, especially with the Perth Scorchers, we're always mingling with the crowd after the game. On a test level, that can be quite tough after being a full day in the field and then sort of dealing with the fans afterwards in that sort of manner. But I think, you've got the 12th, 13th, 14th man there. I think you can utilise those particular players to mingle with the crowd during the game, after the game as well, just to have that fan interaction. You can even utilise past players for that as well. Because we need that interaction. How good would it be if there was a section put off out the back of the stand in India or Australia or wherever, where you've got a group of people can pay to go in and just mingle with a couple of ex-past players, and it doesn't have to be a speaking gig. It's just you, like you and I talking right now, but out the particular stand in the back. There's little things like that can really take that fan engagement to a new level. Good question.
Thank you. I think to keep ex-players safe in India, you do need to use technology.
It's a bit. But if you have a little section where you actually cordon it off, where there's no more than 100 people going in there, but you also have a code of conduct as such when you go in there. If you really are strict on those rules and regulations when you're in there, I don't think you'll get that overreaction with the players as you do see when they walk down the street. So there's ways and measurements to be able to cope with that. Yeah.
Look, this was a question from my workplace.
Rightio, and they want to get stuck into me. Yeah.
No, not stuck into you, but just take a little dig at England. And the answer at my workplace that I would have gotten would have been Joe Root is the best spinner. So.
Yep. Well, they're probably right there too.
Well, if it is really spinning like Michael Clarke used to do, they get players like Joe Root get very difficult to handle.
Well, it is. If Joe Root was a left-handed spinner, I reckon he would have done more damage over there as well. And that's the frustrating thing. There was a period there where you'd take your frontline spinners over to India, and then Michael Clarke would come on. Yep, thank you. These left-arm form finders that won't turn over in Australia.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, because he undercuts them, they're turning over there in India, and that's why it's so important when you look at your team dynamic. When you're looking at spinners to go over to India from Australia, you're not looking so much with the over spinners like Nathan Lyon. You're looking for those undercutters, a bit like a Stephen O'Keefe was or a Michael Beer. Those particular bowlers really do well in Indian conditions, especially in the days 3, 4, and 5, because that undercut either grips in the surface, turns massively, or skids straight on. And that's something that Jadeja does so well over there. So it's a bit of a horses for courses scenario.
Yeah.
So Joe Root, they're a cheeky workplace, aren't they?
Very. And just last question on India England. So the new Indian entrants, is it too early to judge them?
Sorry, who's that?
The new players that India introduced in this test series, the likes of Jurel, Yashasvi at the top, and then Sarfaraz. Obviously, Patidar didn't have a great few games, and then there was Padikkal, who came and scored a 50 in the last game. Do you think it is too early to sort of judge them?
I think it's look, they're fine players. There's no doubt about that. They're high class acts. I think when it comes to being able to play in different conditions around the world, it's way too early to judge. And let's say Jaiswal comes here and plays against Australia and doesn't have a good series. Even then, it's too early to judge because he's just been exposed to it for the first time. It's when you start judging a player with the level that they're at, it's the second time that they come over and play on those conditions. Have they adjusted? Have they found the answers for it? And that sets the chaff from the wheat. Now that you're in Australia, you'll understand that particular saying.
Yes.
So it's definitely way too early. I think Sarfraz Khan, I was worried about him against fast bowling in this particular series. Some of the pull shots he was playing at the back end against some sheer pace shows me that he's been working on his game. And I'd be very, very interested on seeing how he goes in this IPL against a few quick bowlers who are going to test him with the short stuff. But I think he is just about ready to be able to take on an Australian pace attack here in Australia with some of the pull shots that he's played. So, and it's good to see how these young players have worked on their game. Making a 50, making 100 and a double 100 in international cricket's no easy feat. There's no doubt about that. So that's why these are high quality players. But it's about how you, and that's why Sachin Tendulkar, your favourite player, who you grew up, that's why he's the king of India. And that's why Virat Kohli is so good as well, is because the way that they play and have adapted to the different conditions around the world, that sorts the geniuses from the best.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving on to Australia, New Zealand. Before I ask you about Australia, New Zealand, just a question. What do you enjoy more, Australia beating England or Australia beating New Zealand?
Oh, Australia beating England by a country mile. Yeah, I've got a soft spot for New Zealand. I love Australia winning, but I also like the underdog. If New Zealand beat Australia in this particular Test match, I would have really enjoyed it in a sense that they haven't beaten Australia for 30 odd years or 30 odd Test matches. So it's good for New Zealand cricket. It's one of those things. What's best for cricket today, and the best thing for today would have been New Zealand beating Australia as such. But there's another good thing that's happened today. Alex Carey, who is one of the loveliest cricketers going around, loveliest blokes going around, rejuvenated his career, saved his career with a brilliant 98. So the underdog stood up. So I'm happy with that particular scenario. Yeah,
no, absolutely.
That's a good question. I don't know why you'd think that it would be that. I don't know whether I'd know an Australian who would love Australia to beat New Zealand rather than Australia beat England, unless you're talking about rugby union.
Yeah, look, I think not in cricket, yes. But just from rugby, like just that rivalry, I think it'll be good if that sort of spills over into cricket as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's why.
Yeah, cool.
And that's why I think these 2 Test series, they don't do justice. Like this should be at least a 3 Test series, yeah. 2 Test series is too short.
Definitely. But I think they're also rushing to get players back for the IPL as well. I think that makes a bit of a difference. But when you play New Zealand are one of the toughest opponents going around. They just fight, scrap. They never give in. And they challenge you. They challenge you. And it's always tough competition against New Zealand. And I love the way they go about it. They just they're fantastic people. It's good to see a lot of them playing in the IPL as well, and helping them out with them financially, because they don't get paid what they should be at international level.
I had a couple, but if
go for it.
Yep. So let's move around your cricketing life, Brad. And I know you've said many times in your past interviews or past videos that you don't really like talking about your cricketing career as such, but something that I'm really interested in, I mean, you've shown a lot in one-day cricket playing for Australia, early 2000s to like 2007 to 2008. You obviously performed really well in 2007 World Cup, but you did a great job in 2003 World Cup as well, considering what happened just before the World Cup. So Warney was about to play, and he comes back home for whatever reasons, and all of a sudden you pretty much find yourself as the main spinner in the team. What went through your mind? Like, was there a mentality shift, paradigm shift that you went through? Because all of that happened very close to the start of the World Cup as well. So can you talk us through your thoughts and what was the discussion like within the team environment at the time?
Look, it wasn't the best moment in that particular tour. I think most of the team were gutted because you got the number one spin bowler in the world having to go home. But I was excited because it was an opportunity for me, and I thought this was the opportunity that I was never going to get. So that excitement got me through the first phase of that particular tour. But the way I went about it was thinking, right, Shane Warne's not here. I've taken his space. So I'm actually the weak link in this team. So my job is basically just do what I do best, but I'm going to take on the best batsman of the opposition team. If I can control him, if I can dominate him, then hopefully it makes my job against the other batsmen a little easier, because I think, oh, right, there's no Warne. We can attack this George Bradley Hogg. And I knew that would have been their mindset. So I had to get out of the starting blocks and really dominate that their main batsman from day one. And then all of a sudden, the mindset on the opposition batsmen that are coming in next are going to go, oh, gee, it's not going to be as easy as we thought. That's the way that I approached it. And I just try to keep things as simple as I possibly could. I knew I wasn't going to be a Shane Warne, but the thing that I really wanted to pride myself on was being the most economical bowler in the team or in the tournament. And if I was the most economical bowler with the bowling attack that we had, all of a sudden they'll have to take risk against me, and that's where I was going to pick up my wickets. If they couldn't get me, they had to take on the other bowler at the other end, and he would pick up wickets. So that was the mindset that I went in. I didn't think that I had to be a Shane Warne or anything like that. I just had to be me at my best. And I think that's and the only reason why I don't mind answering that question is because hopefully it's a bit of a lesson to other people out there that are put in a situation. You might be at work, you're put in a new role that you weren't expecting, but it's a management role. But you've got to have that belief that you can do it. What are my strengths? How do I do this? Just being the authentic me to help everyone else around it. That's the only way you can do it. If you try and be someone else and not be authentic, you're going to have a tougher time about it. So that's the way I went about it. Trying not to be the Shane Warne.
Yep. No, thanks, Hoggy, for answering that one. I think that performance stands out. That tournament, the performance in that tournament of the Australian team really stands out.
We're very lucky there.
Yep. Sorry, go on.
No, thanks for that question. No, we're very lucky there. I was just just as about to answer the question, it was just something went through my mind of how lucky I feel being part of that particular team. It was just a team of great cricketers, but also great people. We were very lucky. I think the best thing about that particular tournament was the security. Detail didn't want to be on our detail; they wanted to be with other teams. And out the end of it, one of the security guys said, "This has been a fantastic 2 months of our lives. We're so glad." And every other security detail is a bit jealous of not being on tour with you guys, because we try to include them in everything, and we felt that they were part of the team, and that's what makes a successful team, is including everyone who's involved in that particular tour. Make them inclusive in it as much as you possibly can, and that's why that tour was so good.
Yeah, no, great team, absolutely. And And just moving to your Test cricket, you took 17 wickets in Test cricket in your career. 5 of them are the same batsman, which
That's
is Saurav
Ganguly, isn't it?
Ganguly. Exactly
Yep.
right, mate. That's like 30% of your Test dismissals is Saurav Ganguly, who I thought
He
was
wasn't that good a batsman.
Right.
I remember being on a plane in India, and I got a piece of paper from the hostess. He was up the front, I was up the back, and I wrote something on there along the lines of, I can't believe that you're sitting out the front when you're my biggest bunny. Something like, you should be sitting out the back, I should be sitting in the front, because you're the biggest bunny I've ever had. It was the first Test wicket I ever took, but yeah, no, he was a good player. The thing I like about Saurav Ganguly is I think he was probably the first Indian that really challenged Australia with their own culture. So what I mean by that, challenged our culture with the way that he went about it. Not tossing the coin with a coat on, or being late for a Test toss, just trying to hit the buttons of Steve Waugh at the time, who was regarded as one of those who really liked tradition. So Ganguly was really trying to challenge him there, which I thought was a smart move in that aspect of it. And that's just playing little tactics against the opposition. So he really did his homework there about what beliefs a certain player had, and he was going to challenge those beliefs. Whether it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, you're in the world of sport, and that was a little tactic that I thought was genius from Saurav Ganguly.
Yep. Now look, as an Indian growing up in that period of time, Ganguly, like for me, he is my all-time Indian 11 captain. Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Even though I go for CSK and Dhoni, and I love Dhoni and whatnot, but Test cricket, Saurav Ganguly captains the Test side for me. Period. What he achieved was phenomenal, and he was, as a batter, he was particularly good against spinners, particularly left arm spin, and that's why this stat just stands out for me. That you got him 7 innings, you bowled at him, and 5 times you've got him, which is incredible.
Well, yeah, no, it's. Oh, look, I'm pretty lucky. I think he got me a couple of times as well, but look, at the end of the day, I'm very lucky. And someone asked me the question the other day, if I could go back and play one Test match, what would it be? And that would be the 1996 Test match. At the age of 35, probably at the age of 42, around about that time. That's when I probably thought I'd probably bowl on my best. But I would have loved to have gone back there, played out Delhi, but have Virender Sehwag batting against me, and Saurav Ganguly, as well as Tendulkar. But Sehwag was the one that was an absolute menace. Just to be able to have that moment where I probably had a better mindset against him, that would be a challenge that I'd love to go back to Delhi and play a Test match against Sehwag. He was just unbelievable.
It's funny you name Sehwag because you're not the only one. I was just watching Inzamam ul Haq, the absolute great batsman from Pakistan. He was the captain of Pakistan, and Sehwag's batting against them in Test cricket. In the first session, Inzi had 5 fielders on the boundary, and he's like, I'm standing there and I'm wondering, am I even the right person to captain this Pakistan?
You can't. I remember my first commentary gig I did was India versus Sri Lanka. And I'll be honest with you, I got rang up, oh, do you want to come over and commentate? And I said, does it come back to Australia, the feed? And they said, no. I said, all right, I'll come and do it. But I remember after the first day of the Test match, I think Sehwag made 300. But Trevor Bayliss was the Sri Lankan coach. and I got asked to interview Trevor Bayliss. Now, I've never done media on that side of the camera before, where you've got to interview people. And the producer, he's with the BCCI now. He's on my earpiece. He goes, right, don't introduce Trevor Bayliss, just ask the first question. And that was about 15 seconds before I've got to ask Trevor Bayliss the first question. Now I'm nervous already. And I'm going, right, don't introduce him. This does not sound right. And so I introduced Trevor Bayliss, and I asked him a question. You think you made the right decision that you've only played one quick and a number of spinners or something like that, or the other way around. I can't remember what it was. And Trevor Bayliss has answered the question, and I've just gone, oh, that's great, mate, in Australian. And I forgot I was on TV. But Sehwag's innings, he just annihilated the Sri Lankan bowlers. I think he made 230 in the day. I can't remember. I've got to go back to that test match.
Yep.
But
I think he's got a double hundred in the day. Yep.
Yeah. It was just unbelievable. I played him in a test match here in Adelaide, and I went up to Gilly after a couple of overs. I said, Gilly, this is probably the best couple of overs I've bowled, and he is just playing me like someone's feeding a ball machine. So I can't do anything else. He goes, mate, well, I've got nothing for you. You're on your own, yeah? Just think about it, yeah.
Ashwin says something about Sehwag here. He goes, when Ashwin was just starting out, like in the early 20, I say about 2012 or something like that, 2010, 2011, he happened to bowl to Sehwag in nets, and Sehwag was just taking him to cleaners, right? And Ashwin goes, look, I was really starting to doubt myself and my ability. Am I even good enough to play at this level? Like, your IPLs, international cricket and all that. And then he goes to Sehwag, he goes, man, look, I can't believe you were playing me like that. He said, oh, look, don't feel bad. I don't consider spinners as bowlers. So yeah, that was him.
That's awesome. I reckon we finish on that note. That was a lovely note to finish on.
That's a good note to finish on. Thanks, Brad. Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate that.
No, thanks very much, Aashish, and thanks for your love of cricket. And I'm glad that you're making it over here in Australia, and the transition was fantastic. It's just a good story, and I'm glad that you shared that story at the start, because there's a lot of Indian people that do come over here and study, and if they get into the society here, get to a sporting ground and play a bit of cricket, get to know the people here, they can really have a good, fruitful life here. So thanks very much for sharing that with us at the start. And thanks for coming on. There were some great questions there. So really enjoyed the chat, mate. Thanks, Aashish. And you have a good time.
Yep.